I left for 4 years.
Yeah.
I told you, and because it got to a point where the pressure from the ANC was very strong. There was a whole funded campaign to get rid of this guy.
Wow.
Yeah, and people lost their jobs, especially at Brain SA, because they were accused of supporting Soli, of defending Soli, of informing Soli. So it was great. It wasn't great. It was really bad. It got to a point where, I made a decision in 2 months that I needed to get out of this country, and I was out. But it comes with the territory.
It does.
People like Babita and others were killed.
Yeah.
We're still here to speak out.
Yeah. Yeah. It looks like there is no speaking out about these guys.
That's massive.
Yeah, they're huge.
Yeah, and you have been.
I want to just get this file machine up and running and off the ground. So I've got like a sort of a set formula, and I've done a lot of work on the tech to sort of get it right. So I think it's going to be effective. I want to extract the.
Yeah, you did something great in the past. There's no reason why you can't.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
I think the key is to actually get more engagement from citizenry. It's fundamentally important, because I see a lot of things that are sort of boiling over at the moment, and it's as a result of a lot of like speak from media, from politicians, from NGOs that are driving messaging, but there's no real wanting to listen to what the people on the ground have got to say, or start having conversations around some difficult discussions.
What do you think about this national dialogue that is being planned?
The national dialogue, I think we must touch on just now, but from what I can see, it's fallen flat.
Yeah, yeah, sure, we can touch it. Okay,
cool. Let's hit it. So, I think the first thing. So, what we want to do is just have like a broad discussion about a whole bunch of things. There's so many things that we can talk about at the moment in the country.
Right.
I think one of the things that I'm following quite closely right now is the Paul O Sullivan drama. Are you watching what's going on there?
Yeah, between him and Konazi, and looks like there are two camps, right? There's a Paul O Sullivan, or there's a dude, Miller, I think, who came out last week.
Well, that's correct. Yeah, the Mark Miller from Montenegro.
Yeah, and I watched the podcast, the interview.
You saw that with Biz News.
And look, there's so much that's being thrown in the air right now. Some people like to say, well, let's wait and see where the dust settles.
Yeah.
But some things seem already more credible than others. I don't know why. Look, whatever information O'Sullivan has on Sam Konazi, he made lots of accusations, but he hasn't put evidence on. So for now, in my view, from my perspective, Konazi is still the most credible of them all. I'm not saying that other things might not come out that we don't know, because people are saying things, But I'm saying so far, while the dust are still settling, I don't see anybody who's more credible than him.
Well, I mean, you say that, and I agree with you. What we do know is that he was taking money from the Motti Foundation. So we know that from Motti. So this whole thing related to Mac Miller. I mean, to Mike Miller it's to do with the JSE and share price fixing, and the Motti Group is directly related to this. And Paul O Sullivan they know for a fact that he's got property through the Motti Group, and he's got personal loans against his name on the Motti Group. Yeah. So he just entered the fray out of absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
And that,
But I don't know how the Motti Group, is it what do you call it? The Paul Mill.
Zunaid Motti.
I don't know how that linked to Konazi.
Well, that's the thing. They're two separate matters, but it's the timing of it all. If you look at what Mark Miller seems to have, which seems quite damning, all of a sudden it shakes the foundations that Paul is somehow now beyond reproach.
Correct.
And so now you've got to question absolutely everything that comes out of his mouth, and you've got to question where his motives lie. What is the motive behind him coming after Mkonazi?
Yeah, who is he defending?
And everything else that he's done prior to that, is it credible? So it puts a lot of question marks behind Paul O Sullivan's name again there.
I think it's possible that some of the stuff that he's done is credible. The thing with when you get into this space, you end up needing money, and you accept money from sources, some of which may harm your reputation. So, for instance, he started his days at at the airport company, right? And I think some of those early actions, they seem to have been done with the right intention, right?
Yeah.
But over time, and that's the thing, when you get into politics, some people are going to say, hey, some over time, hey, we have some funding, we can give you some funding, but you don't know what motive and where that money comes from, but if you desperately for funds. So it's money. Money is the root of all evils.
Yeah, well, that certainly seems to be the issue with us in South Africa.
Yeah.
It's.
Yeah.
I mean, what we know, there was an attempted hit on Mark Miller. They hit the decoy vehicle.
Apparently, yeah.
So this is like big stakes. These are high stakes, and I think whatever comes out of this is going to seriously shock South Africa as well. What I'm interested in is the fact that the mainstream media hasn't really seemed to pick up the story. It's a big story.
I don't know why. I think it's very hard to know what drives them to be interested in some stories and others. But
this is a big one. I mean, the country needs to know because this man is throwing shade.
Well, it's out there. I mean, Biz News put it out there. He was interviewed. But remember that we also live in an era, not just globally, but in South Africa, where so much is thrown at us all the time. Attention spans are short.
Yeah.
If we were to spend the whole day watching podcasts, we'd never do anything else.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying, but I do think that this is a big story. The country needs to know about the story. The mainstream media should be covering it a lot more because it directly impacts what's going on with Mkonazi. It impacts our view of Paul Sullivan.
How does it?
And the strength of his testimony.
Paul O Sullivan made accusations about Nkonazi.
That's right.
But he hasn't given, his his evidence. There are other people that I've had respect for who have said, Sully, be careful on this Mkonazi guy, stuff is going to come out. I'm saying, okay, let it come out. In the end, it's possible that he might have, maybe benefited from whatever in the past, because it's hard not to sometimes in that space, but it doesn't take away the veracity of accusations. I mean, it's come out that people are involved in the criminal justice system. It seems like this leading to the presidency, this Kate Matla, that stuff is true. Whether or not this guy has done something wrong doesn't take
we're
away
a gangster state.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that, look, we live in an era where everyone is right, everyone is wrong, right? Whose truth is more important? I mean, we become focused on a story. I do, you do, and we think, how come nobody else is focused on the story? And to me, this is a very important. But to other people, other stories are important because it's such a noisy space. It's a very cacophonous space.
It really is a noisy space, but I found it fascinating the attention that some stories get versus others. But anyway, that is the way it is. Let's look at the political landscape at the moment. EFF, we've seen some interesting developments on the EFF front. I mean, if we look at this judge finding, this court finding against Malema. With regards to the gun, but then you also watch what Malema's busy doing, at this committee, and he's unearthing a lot. He's asking a lot of the right questions.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes people are not always wrong. I mean, if people have done criminal wrong, that's wrong. They've got to pay for it, right? Yeah. He was convicted, at least for this thing. He's going to appeal it all the way to the Constitutional Court. We know that we're not going to see the end of it. He's got no money, just like lots of money. We don't know where that comes from. But it's true that he's also asked some really good questions in the commission. I mean, especially when they started, he made it clear, and I'm very happy that he did that. I'm not a supporter of this dude at all, politically speaking, but he was right when he said, look, the Madlanga Commission is appointed by the executive, by the president. The president, who is probably implicated in some of the stuff, is the one who determines the terms of reference, how far it can go, what it can look at, scope, and that sort of thing. But the multi-party committee has got more chances of not being tamed by the president. So Malema was correct when he said, we are the elected lawmakers, okay? And we are multi-party. And anyway, in terms of the law, in terms of the law, the president is the only person in the country who can establish commission of inquiry and determine the terms of reference. And there's everything wrong with that. And Tulima Donsela, just if you allow me, Tulima Donsela, remember she did that inquiry on ganja and state capture, and she's the one who recommended a commission. But she was very smart when, at the time, she said to Zuma, "But Mr. President, because you are the troublemaker here, you can't be the one to appoint the head of this thing, and you can't be the one to determine the terms of reference," which was smart. Had she been tested constitutionally, she would not have passed constitutional master. Okay, but she was right to say, yeah, well, somebody else needs to hit this thing. Now, fast forward to Zondo. Zondo should have taken a leaf out of Tuli's example. He should, given all the evidence that was placed before him, that it pointed fingers to the ANC, he should have said, "Mr. President, I can't give this report to you," because the president is a deployee of the ANC. He's basically giving the evidence, the report, and the recommendations to the gangs, to the gangster to do something about it. And we pretend to be surprised when it didn't. But the other thing, in terms of timing, is that at the time when Zondo was preparing his report on state capture, Ramaphosa was preparing to appoint the next Chief Justice. This is a 10-year appointment. He stayed for 3 years because this is my speculation. My thinking is that he needed to get the title so that when he goes into retirement, he goes with the pecs for life, because there's a pecs for life of the office. So he probably chose. I mean, there was already precedence by Tudi Madonsela. He could have done the same thing, and he had a lot more evidence given. What's it, $1 billion rand spent on this thing? You could have said, "Look, I can't give this report to you. We have to establish a separate independent body to deal with this stuff." He didn't. So we're sitting there wondering what's going to happen. Madlanga reports to the presidency. The president is going to determine to postpone it or to push for this, for that, or to sit on the report and nothing happens. Anyway, he made it clear already in the terms of reference that whatever comes out of it is going to be recommendations, basically. There won't be any, he says, okay, there might be some prosecutions, but look, stuff is coming out that's putting him into the proximity of some of the people who are implicated. So I'd rather trust the parliamentary process. Trust is relative, of course. I'm comparing,
Trust is very relative.
Yeah.
What about Action SA? Where do you think they are? How do you think that they're performing at the moment? I've noticed an incredible increase in the apartheid rhetoric from Herman Mashaba. I did a quick Grok search just to identify how many times he has mentioned apartheid in the last year versus how many times he's mentioned ANC corruption. He's 4.5 more times likely to mention apartheid than he is ANC corruption, according to the stats, which I think is bizarre. And I don't know where that came from, because Action SA, I think, had a support of a lot of the country. It's like something, I don't know if something has changed internally or something has happened to Mashaba, but he seems to be very different from the man that he was when Action SA launched. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, look, a lot of people are giving that feedback, okay? And a lot of people who say that they were attracted to Action SA because of the policies, and it was going to be the party in the middle that brings everybody together, are saying the same things. I think it's going to be up to the leadership of the Action SA, including Mashaba, of course, who's the president, to look at that feedback and decide how they respond to it. I think they should.
But he doesn't seem to be responding. I mean, I even sent Michael Beaumont, I sent him a request to interview, and I said, listen, how about we have an interview with Herman? Let's discuss his point of view. Let's see where he is and see if there's some sort of a discussion that we can take forward from here. But absolutely nothing. In fact, 17 minutes after I sent that, Mashaba launched another post. And, it's not just him. If I'm looking at him and I'm looking at the ANC, I'm looking at the EFF, there's a lot of this rhetoric building. And there's a concern, given the state of volatility that the country's in at the moment, I feel. As a result, a lot of it driven by the immigration issues that we have here at the moment. And I can just see that if the one pops off, the other one might pop off as well. And you have people that are supposed to be the leaders of our nation and the leaders of their people that are incentivizing this continuous, perpetual hatred for the country and a very divisive message. And then in the same breath say that we are actually all united and we are one. But that is just not the case. I don't think I've ever seen South Africa as fractured as it is right now.
Yeah, look, South Africa is now in a very painful state. There's no doubt about it. I think there's this need for leadership that's not desperate to be loved. If you're too desperate to be loved or to be popular, you're going to end up saying all the wrong things just so that you get the numbers, right? I think across the board, I think there's a need for for maturity, for emotional maturity. And whether people like it or not, I like to quote Mandela on this because he was not there to desperate to be loved. When he needed to say you wrong or you wrong, you're wrong, irrespective of who you are, he did it. He also did it with the Chinese, with the Americans. It was whether you agreed with him or not, he had backbone and he knew what he stood for. Even I mean the famous moment in Invictus when he was in a room filled with people who said, "Let's get rid of this Springbok emblem." He said, "No, we can't." And I don't think there's ever been any president ever since him that has been able to do that. Because it's not, because the truth is majority is not always right. The majority is not always right.
Yeah, it seems to be populism now that's driving the messaging.
Yeah. So I think that, I think what this country needs is we're very fragile as a unit, as a national unit, you know, and a voice needs to emerge that will not seek to be loved at all costs. And I think that that voice is silent if it exists.
Yeah, it does seem to be rare at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's not just our politics. It's if you look at the global politics right now, global leadership around the world are all making such strange decisions.
Yeah.
Those decisions are leading to civil unrest all across the world. In fact, many other countries that are part of the United Nations, it's almost like it's an intentional thing because how can there be so many global leaders working towards this UN, ideology of a happy future and tomorrow, and the world is worse now than it has ever been. It's a bizarre place for us to be, and it's just strange watching all of these thought leaders barrel down this road.
Yeah, I think, sure, absolutely. I keep saying that some of our problems are structural, systemic. If you took at a global level, you look at the United Nations system. It was created out in even the Bretton Woods institutes, World Bank, IMF. They were created in the aftermath of the Second World War, and look at the United Nations Security Council and how it functions, and still gives enormous power to 5 countries. Those countries can override anything that comes out of the United Nations General Assembly, where most countries are sitting. So we need to have a conversation. Well, I mean, the conversation is happening, but I think it needs to be fast-tracked about how do you change the UN. I mean, just recently, Trump was wrong to deny a visa to the Palestinian president. Shouldn't be up to him to decide that. This is supposed to be international neutral space. Get everybody in there, agree, disagree with them. But you can't have one player deciding who can attend, who cannot attend. All right. So I would be of the view that the General Assembly be moved to a country such as Switzerland, to Geneva, because a lot of multilateral organizations are sitting
Closer
there
to Davos.
Well, Geneva is where the UN is based.
No, I know.
All the other. I mean, I know. I don't know if you're heading towards the work there, but we can have a conversation about it if you want. But anyway, let me just go on. So, if you look at France, for instance, today they're struggling to create a government. The president is extremely strong. They're talking about the institutions of the Fifth Republic that were established after the Second World War, in the time of Charles de Gaulle and all that. And any person who's observing the political developments in France will tell you that the system as it is of the Fifth Republic is no longer suited to the current environment, where the president has got so much power, they're not able to fund a government or to establish a government. I mean, the president doesn't have power. There are 3 almost equal split of the power between the extreme left and middle or center and right, right? So now, if you come back to South Africa, same thing. We established, we are younger in terms of the UN was after the third, and France after the Second World War, but we established these fine democratic institutions after apartheid ended in the early 90s, right? And many people will agree that we placed too much power in the presidency. Some people say because they were just so much focused on Mandela, they didn't think anybody else would come after him and abuse those powers. But those powers have been abused. Starting with Mbeki. Mbeki was the first person to piss on the rule of law when he suspended a very respected national director of public prosecutions in order to stop him from arresting his buddy, Jackie Slaby.
I remember that.
Who was shown to be captured by the underworld, right? So 2027 to 2025, today as I speak to you, the country's security intelligence systems report into a minister in the presidency. What if the president is the troublemaker? The SIU, Special Investigative Unit, has to obtain a presidential decree, or I call it a political authorization or permission. If they suspect that a crime is being committed over there, they can't go ahead to investigate it unless the president says so. Now, what if the crime involves the president? Do you think he'll give them the permission? So I think there's a need to have a conversation about these institutions that seem good, but they're not. As soon as you put the wrong people, and this is what's been happening, so all of them. I mean, there's SOEs, you've seen how much money has been stolen. The Coups were here, they controlled everything, even the appointment of ministers. The NC is still in denial about that. So we have and the appointment. If you talk about the appointment of judges, we've seen how Malema behaves. Should that kind of man be qualifying to appoint judges? Should we come up with a different system where there's a neutral body that does that? Otherwise, you see politics being played in that room all the time. When they do the interview, they want to appoint their own favorite judges, and they would disqualify you on the basis of being white if they want to. So I think that the conversation that we should be having as a country should not be about who should be a better leader, who could be a better leader. What systems do we need now to stand between us and hell, irrespective of who comes in there? Because you could elect me, nice guy, speaks well, or charming, or this and that nonsense. And then once I get in there, I taste the power, I turn. And when I turn, after I turn, you can't touch me. You can't touch me because the power is in there. The presidency, the defense ministry, they still send money to Cuba. They don't have to be afraid of the DA or their partners in the GNU, and also because they have so there's no respect. But that's on the institutional side. I think that there's a need to empower the citizenry, the civil society in South Africa. There's too much power in the presidency, in the politicians. And I've always said, the last time that the people of this country came together, the people was in 1955 to say, what kind of country do you want to live in? Out of all those processes came the Freedom Charter, which was multi-party, some of whose clauses ended up in the current constitution. And the discussions were, what kind of country do you want to live in? I think since then the people have not come together. Okay, so there's a need to stop looking for all the answers from the political side. There's a need for the people, and that's the difficulty with South Africa, is that we're an extremely diverse country, right? And the politicians who are smart enough, they know how to play us on issues like superficial issues. So we need, as a people, to unite around something and say, we need to take the power back. I was in Switzerland, as you know, over the past 4 years, and I've not just been cycling. I've been studying the political system in Switzerland, and they say that the sovereignty of Switzerland is in the hands of the people, not of politicians. So you're a president. I've been reading a book.
Something interesting about that, they said the average man on the street won't be able to tell you the positions that the politicians hold. They almost are inferior. That was what Vusi Thembekwayo said in a public speak not so long ago.
Yeah,
he said that they are so mundane in terms of, because everything just works and runs. There's no need to know who the politicians are. Whereas in South Africa, there's nobody that doesn't know.
But also, not only that, they know that the politicians can make important decisions without consulting the people.
Correct.
Just like here, we have 3 levels. You have the federal level, you have what they get cantonal level or provincial, and you have the local level. So there are 2 important rights that citizens have in Switzerland. One is the right to referendum. So if you are the citizen, I'm government, and I decide to propose some law, you as a citizen can say, wait a minute, what's that? Well, no, you need to ask us. And then the law says, depending on whether it's a local, cantonal, or federal issue, you need to obtain a certain number of signatures from registered voters, not just any citizen, registered voters who agree with you. So say it could be 100,000 signatures or 50,000, depending on the topic. And then there's going to be a vote. If the vote is on your side, then the law, then the whatever was proposed by government doesn't happen, because the citizen said no, you can't go ahead with that. That's the first one, the right to referendum. The other one is the right to initiative. In other words, you as a citizen can decide, why do restaurants open until midnight? Just giving a not silly example. And then the same thing happens. So you have to obtain signatures, a given number of signatures from citizens who are registered. Of course, there's got to be information. It's not just jumping and singing. And there are information leaflets that are created that are sent to those registered voters to say, okay, these are the issues at stake, and these are the options. Which way do you want to choose? If the citizens support you, whatever proposal you're making, a law will be created to support it. So the president is president just for 12 months. And that's not the real job. The real job could be, you could be Minister of Health. But for this, so there's what we call the Federal Council. So okay, we are a constitutional democracy in South Africa. Switzerland is a parliamentary democracy. So the most powerful body, politically speaking, would be the federal parliament. The federal parliament will appoint 7 ministers who constitute the Federal Council. Those are, and every year on a rotation for the duration of the mandate, they choose a president. It's not a rotation. It's not like it's your turn. You might occupy the position 2 times if you think you're good at what you're doing. But your job is really and you speak almost like a chairperson of the board. You don't speak for a political party, and you don't speak for self. You speak for the collective. So your job, it could be, as I said, it could be minister. They're all ministers. There are 7 ministers, not more than 7 ministers. But they could say, in addition to you being a minister during this 12-month period, you are the president. So you go to the UN. You receive visiting heads of state on behalf of the federation. But you don't have any powers. You can't decide, you know what, we're going to go to war, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. You don't have any of those powers at all. And for me, that's a great system.
My view is that the challenge we have in South Africa, our government, their messaging is unity through diversity. And
you need what, sorry?
Unity through our diversity,
right?
Which is an oxymoron.
What does that mean?
Well, exactly. What does that mean? Because you're basically saying that we come together through our division. I mean, that's pretty apt to where we are right now. But diversity is not a strength of any nation, actually. Diversity is when you've got 16 people on a field playing the same sport, running in different directions. That doesn't make you a winning team. It's when you all have an aligned goal.
Well,
if I may just finish this thought. So the point I'm trying to make here is that we have a very diverse nation, and it's culturally rich and diverse as well. And we are trying to lead South Africa through a Western system. And that system doesn't necessarily apply to the complexities and the challenges that we have as a country. You're never going to find 1 segment of the country that's ever going to be satisfied. If we were to have an Afrikaans president, there'd be issues. If there was an English president, there'd be issues. If there was a Xhosa or a Zulu president, you're always going to find that we are going to have issues, because also to a large degree, we're quite tribal. South Africa is quite a tribal nation, and a collection of these people that have got great diversity. So I'm wondering if we are at this precipice right now in South Africa where we have to take a look at the system, honestly, take a look at the system and this thing we call democracy and the thing that we call the constitution, and have a good hard look at it and see who is it now that we could put our vote behind that we know for certain would take the country to where we as the citizens want it to go. I don't look at any of the political landscape right now and see this shining light of politics. If I look at Unite for Change. I've got an interview with Musi coming up now next week. And I'm going to unpack that a little bit. But we've seen the Good Party, we've seen Razum Zanzi, we've seen Bosa, formerly One South Africa, coming together into this coalition for this super party. And we're seeing, but their policies to me are the things that are in question. Where they stand on certain issues are the things that are in question. And a lot of them are singing from the same hymn sheet, and many of them have got a populist agenda, which leaves us in a vacuum in South Africa. And I think to myself, how are we going to speak to the 45% of the voting population and convince them to jump on board with something that really isn't going to change their life for the better? And that is the reality of where I think a lot of people feel, that they feel like they are not represented in politics.
What do you think should happen?
Well, I think that you've got some bright stars that are shining at the moment, but they are so fringe right now, and hopefully that will change. But if you look at the Organic Humanity Movement, I don't know if you are familiar with them. Organic Humanity Movement, OHM.
I think of.
Yeah,
were they founded by a couple?
it was found by a couple, but particularly the
I think I spoke to them years ago, but
yeah. So they've had a very interesting model for some time now, which speaks about the minimization of government regulation in our everyday lives, which is a big problem. None of these parties are talking about winding back policies. They're all talking about implementing new policies. They're getting more and more involved in business. They don't understand business. They're getting more and more involved in our kids' education. They're getting and blocking the parents, by the way. They're getting more and more involved in every aspect of our lives and slowly but surely creeping in. And I think to myself, like at some point, we have to look and say, how far are we willing to go before we realize that our sovereignty is at risk here? Our freedoms are in jeopardy. If you're looking at the DA, for example, the system that everybody's raving about, this digital ID, and yes, it looks wonderful as a technology, but there's a lot of strings that come with this digital ID. If you just look at China, they're a prime example as to where that digital ID system goes. And we're seeing countries like the UK, for example, that are implementing stringent fines and penalties and making arrests for people on free speech. So we don't really know where these parties stand. A lot of them also globalist. They're all very globalist driven.
Yeah, you said a lot of things. Let me respond. I mean, on the issue of if you choose an African president, there will be whatever president you choose in South Africa, there will be a certain number of people who are not happy with it. But anywhere in the world, it's the same thing.
Sure.
I mean, it's not unique to South Africa.
Sure.
Elections in South Africa are not just for the people who are in power today to lose. They are for somebody else to win. So if this organic movement or whoever else out there has got some great ideas, they must sell those ideas to the people and be voted in. But you can't say, I have great ideas, you must test me, but you don't win elections.
100%, sure.
And we are a democracy.
There are some challenges there, but we have to admit that. Like funding is a huge issue with some of these small parties.
Yeah. Funding will always be an issue in politics, and sometimes that's where we end up with correct bad dealings and stuff. But the only way to test ideas in a democracy is for them to be voted in.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I've just explained to you the Swiss system. Whether it's you as an individual coming with an idea, if you come up and say, let's paint this restaurant yellow, and nobody supports you, then tough. No matter how strongly you feel about whether I'm saying. So in South Africa, I think we shouldn't just be waiting for politicians to come up with solutions. Like I said, there's got to be a way for the people to get together again and agree on what kind of country they want to live in. And because we're such a diverse country, it will never be an easy thing. If you lived in, people like to quote saying Singapore, Rwanda, or countries which are culturally relatively more homogeneous than we are. We are not. We're the crazy melting pot, right? So if you want to lead a country like South Africa, you can't have a winners take all approach. You can't lead it from the extreme right or from the extreme left. You have to find some way to please most people. Well, you're not going to have, if you're going to please all the right wingers, then you lose everybody else. If you're going to the left wingers, you're going to, my view is that South Africa, because of the diversity, the complexity of it, can only be led from the middle, somewhere in the middle, right? Not in the extreme. And Mandela led from the middle, actually, in his the way he spoke, the way he did things. He was able to say, but you can't do that because when he once announced, I'm going to have coffee with Patsy Verwoerd. People said, are you crazy? And he said, I'm going to do it. And he wasn't arrogant about it. He said, let me tell you why I'm going to do it, why it's important to do that, right? So when you're a leader who is filled with huge levels of emotional intelligence, maturity, vision, you have a big sense of the big things. People, not only did Mandela do those things, but it was right after the end of apartheid, when levels of of suspicion were really high, fear, what they used to refer to as black aspirations, white fears, all that stuff was crazy, really high. But this man came and said, wait, just relax, let's do this, let's not do that, right? So in the end, we need somebody who can, if you sell ideas and get as many people as possible to support them. If you have a workshop of 500 smart people who agree with you, it's not enough. You still have to sell them in the open market, in the open political market. And we can't rely on the Musis and the Goods and the ANC or the DA to give us solutions. We must first be clear about what we want and then demand of them what we want, rather than wait for them to offer us something.
So how do we find clarity on what we want? Because everything's about as clear as mud right now.
Well, but I think the idea of a national dialogue is a good one. No. I'm saying as a principle. I referred to the 1955 gathering of people. Before the elections, I wanted, through to the civil society movement that I founded, to host what I call a people's summit, where we would agree, okay, let's from 1955 say 2023, let us get as many people as possible into the room and decide what you want. And I wanted to do this before the elections so that we can then say to people, to parties that are contesting that we're going to contest the elections, this is what the people want. But I was stopped. The ANC, stopped me, government. The Busa and BLA said we're going to support us. They were told, no, you can't. Busa was talking to us. We had like several meetings. And then suddenly one day they come to a meeting to say, look, we've been told that we cannot support any initiative that aims to influence the outcome of the elections, the 2024 elections. So obviously there are great interest in there. So when this national dialogue thing came, I, in my own little other over, that's the same idea that we wanted to do, right? Okay, Becky came, he's a bigger voice as well. He amplified he amplified it if you want, and then other foundations, the Black foundations and other several foundations and civil society movement kind of joined up with them. But the ANC saw that, and I say the ANC wins either way. It says either we control it or it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think so. Short answer to your question, I think that the people have to find a way. When you need funding, whether it's a political party, you need to get people together to say let's agree, and don't expect in a country as huge as to get everybody into the room. There's also even people who vote generally are like a percentage of the entire voting population. But if you get a good number of representativity into a room, you come out with a document that says this is what they were. It doesn't mean that in 1955 every single South African was part of the process in Kliptown. It wasn't. But you come with something that can credibly say we had so much diversity representativity. We, the people, want X. And then we push it on to whoever wants to go into politics to contest elections. So this way, because we, the people, it's a huge claim, of course. We, the people, say they want this. If you promise, and don't know what happens between the promise and what happens in the case, yeah? If you promise to do this that we want, we will vote for you. Right. But the thing is, you can't, either there's a revolution, there's a coup d'etat, which we don't want, or we get people into power who can make the changes that we need. Because that's what we need. The key is to find the right people who go in there and not suddenly get lost with their blue lines and all the fun of traveling overseas, but say, okay, we're here to change, to institute systemic changes that the people want. That's what, in my view, we need. And it's a hard thing to obtain.
Yeah. Just something you touched on there. So we've had, I think it's 5 warnings now about civil unrest coming right from the top, saying that there's a good chance that there's going to be civil unrest in the country. Do you think that civil unrest could lead to a coup d'etat?
No.
Do you think that, and do you think, how close do you think we are to civil unrest, particularly with regards to immigration? Because we're seeing the temperature going up. Dadula is not relenting. They are being adamant on their position. I think they're getting a lot of support from the country because the country can see that we are on our knees at the moment. Right. And there's opportunities that have been taken away, things like healthcare and work and employment. Yeah. So we can't deny the fact that the temperature is going right up and it's at rapid pace now. What do you think that looks like?
I don't think there'll be a coup d'etat because a lot of the big army generals are ANC people from Conte Sizwe. Okay.
And they got no bullets.
But apart from that, I don't think that they have the will to take power from the ANC. I don't think so. So I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
And it would be a big mistake. If anybody tried that in South Africa, I don't see it succeeding. This is a very complex country, not a little country with like 2 million people. You can't do a coup d'etat in a country like this. It's too complicated. You're not going to. I think that, of course, the problem of illegal immigration is a huge problem for the reasons that you mentioned. There's no doubt about it. There are lots of people who are coming here, who are they take the kids to schools, to hospitals, and so on. They are not documented, and when you try to make noise about it, when those who do, obviously you're accused of being xenophobic. I think the promise is to draw the line. I think there's nothing wrong with immigration if it's legal.
Of course.
Right. But also, we don't sufficiently talk about the fact that a lot of people who come here and obtain illegally South African papers, they get them from South Africans. So there's a lot of greed in border officers, home affairs officers.
Yeah.
That's why we now, as South African passport holders, need visas to go into places like Germany, the UK, to where we could go before without visa. Suddenly they see people from Pakistan arriving on a South African passport. They're like, what's going on? Sometimes we even want a Zulu name. So I think that the damage to our system is so deep. I describe this as South Africa is almost like a fully perforated bucket
Yeah.
because so many holes you don't know which one to fix first because it's going to require years of consistent hard work to fix this. It's a pity that there are too many people who are invested in the chaos and they have power.
And there's a lot of money that sits in that pool.
Yeah. And they will sit in the path of whatever good that needs to happen for the country. Giving up should not be an option, but we should never think it's going to be easy.
Absolutely. On X, which is a wonderful place,
Right.
I'm seeing a lot of racial tension building on X. I'm looking at that influencer Nota. I don't know if you know Nota. He was in the States right now. He made a horrible comment about Charlie Kirk, and they revoked his visa and they sent him back. But he was the guy that refers to white South Africans as Neanderthals and that we should be pushed into the ocean. And so he's got this, and he's got quite a lot of he calls himself moral authority on X. He's got quite a substantial following. He's got some podcasts that he gets involved in.
Nota, N-O-T-A.
N-O-T-A.
Okay.
And he's been an incredibly divisive figure, and he's one of many that are perpetuating it. Again, like I said, you've also got Herman Mashaba posting these apartheid things constantly. You've got the EFF who's always been radicalized in their view towards us, and a couple other parties. So there seems to be on social media this groundswell of emotion building around the racial divide. Now, if you had to ask me what the top 10 problems are in South Africa, racism would not be on the top 10 of that list. I think that it's an issue that's exacerbated. My personal experiences from being out on the street, meeting everyday South Africans. Yes, occasionally you'll come across somebody that's rude and you don't know what their intentions are. But by and large, we're a country that gets along very well. This whole thing is being amped up and ramped up and utilized, as we know, for the coming elections. I'm just concerned about the fact that sometimes these things have the ability to spill over off of social media and into the streets. What is your take on that? Do you think that's a realistic concern from both sides?
I don't know if it will be widespread. I mean, there are maybe in a way we're protected by the huge diversity. I keep going back to it. There'll always be on all sides people say, no, you can't do that, stop it. Even, that grouping in Joburg that was trying to stop foreigners from going into hospitals or clinics. But many people from across the board said, no, you can't do that. The law, we know it's wrong, but you can't stop the people from doing that. Like the closest, even in KZN, okay, 20, was it 20?
The unrest, I was just going to cite that.
Yeah, we had that unrest that spilled into Joburg, into Gauteng. As at least part of Gauteng. There's still, I think a lot of people still agree that it was caused by the whole Jacob Zuma thing, right? Jacob Zuma is no longer, I don't think he's as strong as today as to create that sort of thing. I could be wrong, but I know that his party has done fairly well in the elections. But I think the heartfulness is on corruption, on the corruption that's coming out. And
that to me is the biggest threat that we've got in South Africa.
Look,
it all stems from there.
Correct.
Right?
What we had the Zuma must go, remember?
I remember,
which was super effective.
Yeah.
I think maybe we need something like that again, which is not against Zuma but against the criminal suspects who have been turned into lawmakers. They're sitting in parliament with the Zuma party, with the ANC party. People who've stolen money, people who've been accused. During the year of COVID, the Minister of Health was Mkhize.
I remember.
This dude is accused of stealing 150 million rands. He's now chairing a parliamentary committee. The lady who was Ramaphosa's spokesperson.
You can't make it up.
Kusela Diko. She's also sitting and chairing the parliamentary committee on communications. So I think that we don't have an adequate level of outrage in South Africa. And I think that we still allow, if you were to express outrage, they will say you're racist, you're white, you're missing a part.
Exactly, it's by design.
Yeah, but if I do, some will say I'm a chicken nigger, a kitchen nigger.
Yeah, Uncle Tom or whatever.
Or they'll say, who's paying you? Yeah. And you must not be naive. These things are instigated. I mean, Bell Pottinger was here for almost 2 years, and people didn't say what's going on. We saw the temperature rising. And then one day it turned out, this is a campaign that is funded by the Suptas, okay, to put salt into those racial fissures that we have. Everybody knows that, well, everybody, I always say that race is our biggest fault line in South Africa. If you create racist in a room filled with South Africans, we'll have a stampede. So I think that, but I don't see. It's hard to imagine one thing that will make everybody stand up together. We have all the reasons for this corruption. It should make us all stand together. But then then we have some schmuck staying up to say, but well, there was also corruption during apartheid.
And that will always happen. I see, I went to go and interview some of the guys from the Gaza protests that were happening in the waterfront, and there were 250,000 people the week before that had gone to this protest. And I asked the organizers, I said, how is it that we do not have this type of turnout for our own country, which is on its knees right now? If we take Gaza and the IDF and Israel out of the equation, we have got a ton of our own issues. We've got a lot more deaths as a result of what's transpired over the last 30, 40 years in South Africa. We've got significant challenges here. But you cannot seem to get local South Africans switched onto it. And I'm almost of the opinion that we've been completely desensitized through having this stuff bombarded in our face consistently. And I don't know what it will take before the wheels just come off the bus and South Africa just says enough. Yeah. It frightens me, the concept of what that might be.
There was years ago when Mugabe was messing up Zimbabwe, and the Zimbabweans started flooding into South Africa and other places. In the Sunday Times, on the op-ed in the Sunday Times, I think what's this guy's name? And he used to end he serialized it every week. He was asking the question, what will really make Zimbabweans angry at the old government? Now we're asking the same things about here. I mean, you're right, we've become desensitized. We talk about it, we think we've become keyboard warriors, right? We think after we've spoken about it, it's done, but it's not done. And then the next thing, but because there are so many of these things that keep coming out, we move from one story to the other to this. So if you don't keep the Babita Deokaran story alive, it'll be swamped, it will be swallowed up by other stories.
Yeah.
And other stories. Because there are many, she's not the only person who's been killed, but she's the flavor of the month in terms of the media, because of the Chef Week book that came out, but soon they will forget her. There are other people that have been killed.
Yes.
There was a couple, the gentleman and his son, who were business rescue practitioners. There's a guy who was a lawyer also, who was killed recently in Joburg. He was a forensic auditor.
I saw that.
And other people. So we don't have sufficient. It's like, we cry for 2 or 3 days and we move on. And Ramaphosa comes in with his charming speech. It's so bad, blah, 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 and we forget it, we move on. So what will it take? I don't know. I wish I had an answer.
Well, I've got a feeling we'll find out one of these days.
Yeah.
Okay, so on to Afriforum. They've been in the public domain a lot lately. I mean, a lot of people.
Again.
Well, I think the emotions are running very high against Afriforum because they've just come back from their tour of Europe and the States, where they've been drumming up support for what's going on in South Africa. They've also launched a number of applications at the court against the TRC. That's one of the big ones.
Yeah.
The TRC, because Ramaphosa recently said we need to start trying people from the TRC Commission. So he said, really?
Right.
Afriforum said, well, there's a whole lot of people that weren't tried, so let's put them all on this place.
Good.
They're taking on ESCOM and NERSA. These are very interesting things to me, because you would think that it would be the DA or one of the political parties to take them on, but it's not. It's a civil rights group that nobody likes, really. Everyone's sort of boxed them into this this corner, but they're doing some very interesting work to ruffle feathers, and I think you never know what might happen with some of their court applications. So
I think it's fine. I
Yeah.
also think it's fine for them to have gone to the US or wherever they want. We we did that during apartheid. We went all over the world to get support. If your own government can't listen to you, what's wrong with going elsewhere to look for help? And these international institutions were created for that. We went, I mean, I'm saying we, so the South African government went to the International Court of Justice against Israel because the world was not listening. So nobody has more right to seek help elsewhere than if you have a partner that you abuse and you're not listening to them. They have the right to go next door or somewhere else to look for help against you. So I don't have a problem with that. As long as everything they do is done legally, you
Yeah.
know, I don't think that, I honestly, no, I definitely, absolutely don't think that anything they did is treasonous. Treason is state capture. Treason is everything that's coming out of the. So I think that they must keep going, okay? They must not be race blackmailed to say you because you're doing this because you're Africans. No, it's nonsense. I think they have the right to stand up. It's the same way that during apartheid people had the right to stand up and look for help somewhere. If they go to the courts or to the any credible international body that decides with South Africa you need to stop, that's great. I mean, you can't have a president who refuses to meet you, and then you're not allowed to go somewhere else to get somebody to listen to you. It's absolute nonsense.
So do you think that these next two elections that we have, the 2026 and the 2029, do you think that that's the final make or break? The direction we go in after that will be irreversible. Do you think that's where we are?
Well, no, I don't think in those terms. I, but I, no, but I think that we do need to stop this thing somewhere at some point. But there would always be South Africa. We don't know what kind of South Africa there's going to be, right? I think and I see a lot of people asking for Ramaphosa to go, and they've risen to ask for him to go. He's a very weak president who's put his party ahead of the country in many instances, who's allowed a lot of stuff to happen that shouldn't have happened. As a leader, he doesn't have backbone. There's no doubt about it. But if he's going to, his term is going to end in 2027. His party term. Remember that he's president of the party and then becomes president of the country. Yeah. So in 2027, he's going to stop being president of the ANC, if not before. And as things stand, Mashatile is going to take over. For me, it's out of the frying pan into the fire. Okay.
Into the fire, into the volcano, I think.
Yeah. So South Africans generally South Africans, across the board, don't have any say on who becomes the ANC president in 2027. But they have a say on whether that person becomes president of the country or not in 2029. So let us hope that a voice, a collective, a group of people will stand up and be more appealing to South African voters in 2029 than the people that we have in the game, right? So that the ANC is so weakened, whoever it chooses as president in 2027 doesn't get to become president of South Africa in 2029. The only power that we have to stop the ANC, South Africa is not going to heal while the ANC remains in power. There's no way that's going to happen. So its power has to be reduced massively. But then that power must go to the MKP and to the EFF. But the truth is, if we look at, even though we have a coalition now or different parties with a bit of percentage of this or that, but a lot of the power it still remains on the left and extreme left, right? So
Which is strange to me because we're a conservative country. We're 85% Christian country. So you'd imagine that the leaning politically would be more to the right.
No,
but that's just not the case.
I don't think religion plays a part. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but
no. What I'm doing is I'm saying that if you look at by and large conservative nations, they are Christian based. That's why they are conservative, because they operate.
Muslim countries are also conservative. Muslim countries are conservative. Saudi Arabia is conservative.
Okay, sure, but again, that even there, if you're looking at Islamic countries, that also ties into the Injil. So the Injil comes back to. So my point is this: not to get lost on that. My point is that with that in mind, where you've got these conservative values which are not much aligned to the left, generally speaking, it's strange that there is so much left-leaning politics in South Africa. I actually raised this the other day in a video that I did. And there is no representation on the right per se. You've got the DA, which claims to be centre-right. I question that. I think they're more on the left. And then you've got Freedom Front Plus, which is not exactly going to speak to the whole nation. You've got ACDP. Who else do you have? You don't really have any big machinery.
Yeah, but I think the big driver of votes in South Africa is fear of colonialism, of apartheid coming back.
Of course.
It's crazy. I mean, I meet people who seem smart, more sophisticated, modern, and who will say to you, I mean, these two examples. I was invited to a dinner one day in Joburg, and this lady who works for a mining company, she's a senior in a mining, big car, nice, big home, all the sophistication of modern black middle class, everyone. And sometime in the middle of the dinner, she says, "Look, I really hate what the ANC has done to this country. I'm angry at the ANC, but I'm afraid that if I vote GA, apartheid will come back." I almost fell out of my chair when somebody said, because it's impossible. Even if the day wanted to, it's impossible to bring it back, because it means that you must undo the constitution. You must do
and the will of the people. The will of the people didn't want it there anymore.
But I want to just respond to you. Look, the race is still a big driver. Okay, Zuma came, and his party was created 5 months before the elections. It didn't have any policies. Everybody knows that. But what he is good at is weaponizing colonial and apartheid, pain, racism. But the ANC does that. But he really pushed to that. But Malema also played that card.
Huge.
So it's not religious values that drive people to vote in South Africa. I don't think so. It's
not the religious aspect.
Race,
it's the conservative aspect that I'm referring to. So take religion out of the equation. I would just use religion as a basis, because a lot of those conservative views come from that. But I'm saying there's no black party in South Africa that's got those core. Even if they were centristic, if they were slightly to the right, more centered, I think that you would have a huge amount of support. But there isn't anything in that space which is mind blowing. There's not even a hint of it. You see, the ACDP, in my view, you can't bring Christianity into the basis of your political party, because there's a lot of factors for that. I think there's nothing wrong with having the underlying core fundamentals of that, but your messaging is key. It's very important, and your audience is very important. Aside from them, there is nothing that even remotely reflects that. It's so strange.
Well, I think that, again, we need to think that we need to shift the paradigm of our thinking from what are politicians offering us to what do we want. Okay, we're still waiting for the right party to say the right things, but or the right guy to charm us, or the right lady to charm us. I think what we should be saying is, okay, given everything that's happened, given everything that we know, what do we want? How do we need a lot of resources, there's no doubt about it, to get people to say what. And you can't touch every little thing. I mean, there'll always be people who are say, well, anti-gay because of their religious or conservative views, others who are anti-mixed marriages maybe, but there's a core that will agree on many things. I believe that. There's a core that will agree on it. Just, if you look, you spoke about Herman Mashaba, actually, I think when a lot of people navigated towards actually saying Mashaba ahead of the elections, because they thought that's a party that is not going to use race, that's going to bring us together into this rainbow thing that we've been trying to build that's been messed up, right? So I think that I think there's still, and a lot of people who express anger now will cite those things, will say, we came there because we believed in X, but now something else is happening. That's what I'm saying. I think it's the responsibility of the leaders of that party to hear that, hopefully, and then respond to it. Or somebody else must hear that, or somebody else. In the end, like you said, and I totally agree with you, I think most South Africans just want a country that works, irrespective of whether the leader is Christian, Muslim, gay, straight, as long as that person works for the people. I think that most, and those, you'll have fringes, but the people at the core, at the center, the broad center, really don't care what you're about the background. They just want you to just come in and just do the work.
Yeah, I think it's the nuclear family. It's a good education. It's work opportunities. It's being able to own your own home, put food on the table for your family. I don't see the aspirations being much greater than that for almost the entire country.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's, and it's strange because we have such a wonderful opportunity to turn this country into something really incredible, and to be the leader of the African continent. But sadly, we have lost our way. We have lost
Yeah,
our way.
we have lost. I think we must sort of think. Look, you know that the other thing that's painful about South Africa. I've had the fortune of living in different countries, not just visiting. I mean, I lived in Canada, I engaged. I mean, I lived in the US. I lived in France. I lived in 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 Switzerland more recently. And I say to people here, especially black people, that it's important that South Africa works because this country is important for global negritude, global blackness. What do I mean by that? There are people who come from the Caribbean, from elsewhere in Africa, America, elsewhere who are black, brown, people like this, who want this country to succeed so that they can look at those who say, you guys can't run anything. They want people to say, haha, look at South Africa. They are running, black people, I mean, majority, right? Running a modern, complicated, complex economy, and they're doing a good job. But we failed the test.
Yeah.
And the people at the dawn of our democracy in the early 90s were saying, oh, it's just a matter of time. I lived in Canada in the 90s, after when Mandela was president. I spent 5 years there. I remember I met a guy from what's the country next to Ethiopia?
Eritrea.
Eritrea.
Yeah.
I met a guy from Eritrea, and he said, "Oh, it's just a matter of time. You're going to look like." I said, "You're talking nonsense. Get out of here." Now, if I see that guy today, my entire tail is between my legs. So I think that it what it represents is important, and we fail. People in Africa or elsewhere in Africa are either laughing at us because we're very arrogant, or crying with us because they really wanted us to succeed. When I know a guy who came here from Benin with almost nothing. So I used to teach French. When I came back to France, I taught French at Alliance Française in Soweto in Johannesburg. And then I got this job in Canada. And the guy who replaced me was this guy from Benin. So he came with high school, but he spoke French. They needed somebody to come and take over that because I know my departure was very quick, if you want. And now he works for the United Nations. He and his brother came here from Benin looking for a better life in South Africa. He works for the UN in Addis Ababa, his brother as well, PhDs from South Africa. Now this guy says to me, Solly, I want your country to succeed because without your country, I would not be where I am. It's important that your country succeeds. And I love your country because it gave me an opportunity in life. And I think that there are many others. So we shouldn't, those people who speak out against people just for the being foreigners are wrong. I think that the strength of any country in the world, America, Europe, many countries in Europe, Western Europe especially, is the strengths come from the diversity. I think you almost said something about diversity being a weakness. I don't even know if that's what you meant.
Well, it's, if you take
Diversity
it
is
to its
strength.
core, it's diversity is division, it's separation.
If you run a company and you have a team that is diverse, you are in a better position, especially if you trade in globally.
But that company has got an end goal. That's the unity. We are lacking the end goal.
Yeah, because we don't. So I talk about brands and country brands. That's my strength. Okay. So every brand needs to have four key elements. One is vision. In terms of South Africa, the vision is outlined in the preamble to the Constitution. What kind of country do you want to create over the next future, right? That's vision. Two, a set of values. What are the things that are acceptable? What are the things that are not acceptable? You also need to be clear about what you do when the things that are not acceptable happen, right? So what are the values? You need leadership. Leadership doesn't just mean somebody with a PhD or MBA. Somebody who is able to set the tone from the front based on the values, the vision. Somebody who's, if it's a company, somebody who lives, the CEO, the MD, or the entire leadership team must inspire everybody else to say we want to be there, right? The fourth thing is I have a very clumsy description of it. It's like as a brand, even a country brand, you need to have a 360-degree view of the environment in which you operate, inside, outside, immediate outside and broader outside. What I mean by that, for instance, in terms of a country like South Africa, we are not an island. No brand is an island. We are a country in SADC in Southern Africa. We are a country in Africa. We are a country in the world. So I don't agree with people who say, let's not be worried about problems elsewhere. We should be worried about. The other world was worried about problems here. So it's nonsense to say, let's just focus here. It doesn't mean that we should not neglect this in favor of the stuff that's far. It doesn't mean that. But what it does mean is that we can focus on both. We can say, for instance, in Sudan, many people are being killed there. We can't shut up.
Nigeria, DRC.
DRC, all those places. So we can say, you know what? We can say we have our own problems here. Let's not focus on that, because the next thing those things are going to come here, right? So as a country, we need leaders. We need to be clear about where we're going, and we've lost the path.
We have definitely lost the path. The challenge that I see we have as a country is that our boat right now is full of holes, and we need to be plugging up those holes. I 100% agree that we should not be ignoring Sudan, we should not be ignoring Nigeria, we should not be ignoring Mozambique, DRC. There's tragedy that is striking, but at this point in time, we don't even have military apparatus. So, South Africa has got it needs to urgently stop the bleeding in terms of the money going out of our economy. We need to have a proper merit-based system in place. We need to have leaders that are ethical, as you alluded to. And we need to make sure that we can start to stabilize the security of the country, which should be our priority. We are so vulnerable right now that if Mozambique wanted to breach us, I don't know if we'd be able to fight them back.
Yeah.
And that is a frightening place for us to be. On top of that, it looks as though Thabo Mbeki has got some sort of a network or a partnership with M23 in the DRC. They were at some state event here, or some event that he was attending. When they asked the guys who these guys were, they were like, no, it's M23, they're here with Thabo Mbeki. I mean, that is insane. That is insanity. We've got some real challenges here that we need to address.
To be involved or to be concerned about what's happening elsewhere doesn't mean that you have to send resources.
Oh, I agree.
Okay.
But listen, man, it's so good to see you. Just do
So where to from here?
Just smile.
Yeah, this is my better side. I'm kidding.